Then cameras and recording devices have been barred inside the Durban High Court, where 5 men charged with the murder of South African rapper Keenan aka Forbes are appearing. Forbes and his friend Tibello Tips Mutswane were gunned down in a popular Durban nightlife area in 2023. The case was remanded to today for a pre-trial conference. At the beginning of court proceedings, Judge Kiel Hendricks ordered that no recording devices may be used in court. Media houses were allowed to broadcast court proceedings previously when the high-profile case was still before the magistrate court. Lastly, talks ended progressing towards a ceasefire in Gaza are expected to take place between the U.S. and Israeli officials in Italy later today. They are being held as starvation is spreading across the territory. The BBC's Yolanda Nell.
The timing is critical, with the UN warning that Gazans are suffering from man-made mass starvation. Israel continues to accuse Hamas of stealing aid, blaming it for food shortages. It wants distribution to continue via the controversial American group, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. But Hamas wants the UN to oversee a surge in aid, as do international humanitarian agencies. Other points blocking a ceasefire deal remain the extent to which Israeli troops would withdraw from Gaza and whether a proposed 60-day truce will lead to a full end to the war.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Kenya head coach Benny McCarthy has named his final squad for the upcoming African Nations Championship tournament, while Stefano Tsitsipas parts way with coach Goran Ivanovic. Details coming up at 12:30.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Onele Nzinzi with our news update. I'm Sabudi Makura with our sports headlines. It is 12:06 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, on OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 #Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And today on #Africa Update Ask, Cameroon is going to elections in October, where the current president, 92-year-old Paul Biya, will be looking for another term in office. Now, some are calling for him to step down and allow younger blood to take over. Now, our question to you is, do you think African leaders overstay their welcome? And should there be a final cutoff for presidents, or should they be allowed to continue until they feel it is time to leave? I'll share your views and your thoughts on all our social media platforms, on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa, and you can also send us your voice notes on +2763 at 406 9126 #Africa Update Us.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Our SABC Sport brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Now, starting on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroics that made rugby history. I'll stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere. No subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views, share your opinion, engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 9 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has replaced his country's Prime Minister, Edouard Ngirente, naming the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, that's Justin Nzengiyumva. It is unclear as to why he made the decision. Now, for more on this, we are joined by our correspondent, Silvanus Karamera, who is in Rwanda. Silvanus, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon to you, too.
Now, does anyone know why Kagame made the change and the reasoning behind the appointment of Justin Nzengiyumva as the new Prime Minister?
Thank you, Lulu. It is very hard actually to know what exactly happened behind the curtain, because Dr. Edouard Ngirente, the former minister, has been hailed as one of the performing prime ministers that Rwanda has ever had. This is drawn from the different analysts and from different posts on social media here in Rwanda. He's been hailed for having stood firmly for economic growth here in Rwanda, especially during the COVID-19 way back in years. And he's been serving his second term in a sense that he's been serving for 8 years. He worked with President Kagame during his first term, the previous term, sorry, and recently when he secured another term for presidency, he also nominated him as Prime Minister. So as I speak now, for really, it's very early to know what happened with him, and even from the tweet message he wrote yesterday, he thanked the President Kagame, and from the very tweet, you could read that he's to some point very satisfied, because it was a very long, to some point, a very long tweet thanking him for having worked with him and so on and so forth. So, as I speak now, we have not really, understood why he has replaced him, today.
So Silvanus, what's the reaction on the ground? What are the people of the country saying?
Yes, that's what I actually touched on when I was talking to you from the beginning. Frankly speaking, we always know that when people are taken out of their offices, we see some negative comments or negative analysis. But for him, since yesterday, when the communique was released by the presidency replacing him, I have been reading extensively on different social media platforms, and people. Even people are wondering why he's been, replaced. Some people say it's very early for him to have been replaced because he's very energetic. He's only 52. He's an economist with immense experience. So they thought Rwanda needed him. But of course, most of people are wondering why the president has replaced him. Although even his replacement is also going by experience and detailed experience. People say he's also good. Now the new prime minister. But frankly speaking, people have been appreciating him. People have been reading around and saying he's been one of the best prime ministers that one has ever had after independence.
I know you just touched on the new prime minister, but talk to us about the role of the prime minister in Rwanda and what Nzengiyumva has to do in order to ensure that he is successful in that role.
Well, the Prime Minister in Rwanda is the head of the government, and going by the 117 constitutional provision, he's nominated by the President, and the President has the prerogative power to install and remove the Prime Minister. And going by the Constitution, after his appointment, 15 days after his appointment, he should install in the new government, which now provides some reasons that maybe we are likely to see the cabinet reshuffle in the next few days before the days, elapses. But now going by the gentleman himself, he's also an economist and a very experienced person because he's been a deputy governor of Central Bank in Rwanda since February. But he also having dual nationality. He's Rwandese and British Rwandese, so to say. He's been working in the UK for some time, and but prior to going to the UK, he was also serving with in different capacities here in Rwanda. So looking by his track record is also good. What people are waiting for is to see whether or not he's going to do what his predecessor has been doing, because frankly speaking, people say he has been doing quite very well.
Well, Silvanus, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you so much, Lulu.
That's our correspondent in Rwanda, Silvanus Karamera, joining us on the line. It is 12:15 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Tulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Well, it is 12:16 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. And today on hashtag Africa Update Asks, we basically focusing on Cameroon, with the Cameroonians going to the polls in October this year. Our question to you is, do you think African leaders overstay their welcome, and should there be a final cutoff for presidents, or should they be allowed to continue until they feel it is time to leave? And the background being obviously 92-year-old Paul Biya as the president of Cameroon, looking for another term in office, and some are calling for him to step down and allow younger people to take over. And we ask again, do you think African leaders overstay their welcome, or should there be a final cutoff for presidents? And let us know what your thoughts and your views are on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406-9126, hashtag Africa Update, and hashtag Africa Update Ask. Now, we posed the question before the show started, and we got a response on Facebook, and this is from Enoch Chipinga, and his response is, at 92, he is supposed to retire already. So that's just one response that has come through on our Facebook page, and if you want to hear your views and your thoughts on our platform, just respond to any of our questions that we asked, especially today. It is a very interesting one. It is 12:18 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African time.
Our southern Cameroon's Ambazonia citizen resident in South Africa believes Cameroon's president should not be running for elections and should rather go on retirement. Our Cameroon goes to the polls in October, where 92-year-old Paul Biya is set to run again for another term in office. And to discuss this, we are joined in studio by Cletus Sufri, the spokesperson of Ambazonia, South Cameroons in South Africa. Cletus, thank you for coming through to our studios and joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here today to discuss the calamity state, as we call it, of Cameroon, where we have a president who has decided not just to destroy the country even more, but he has decided vehemently as a dictator who've been there for more than 4 to 5 years. Before I was born, before my daughter, who is 22 years old, was born, and before my son, who is 9 years old, was born. So it is more than a 3 generation of massive dictatorship under President Paul Biya, who took office even before 1982 when he became the president. He has been the Secretary General at the presidency in the 50s and 60s, and in the 70s he became the Prime Minister of the then Cameroons. But now he has vehemently refused. This chap doesn't speak very well, he doesn't move very well, he doesn't think for himself. He's got aides that think for him. And a lot of school of thought are saying if he's actually AI, that is in the place of President Paul Biya, or indeed he's still the man that we knew before we were even born.
Now, Cletus, the constitution of Cameroon was amended to some basically accusing Paul Biya to suit himself. What are some of the changes that were made on the Constitution to allow for him to stand for another term at the age of 92?
Well, we have to go back from 1972. The president of Cameroon, he abolished, there was an abolish where he started. He was, as I said, he was a Secretary General up to the Prime Minister of that country. So from 1972, when he started working, in 1984, he changed the country's name from the Federal Republic of Cameroon, which is the Southern Cameroons and the French Cameroon, to the Republic of Cameroon, which meant for that the union between the Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia that we stand for now, has collapsed. He collapsed it in 1984. And therefore, the dictatorship did not only grow, it risen from where 30% of the population of Cameroon, which is the English-speaking, that were colonized by the British under the reign of the League of Nations, together with Nigeria, that joined Cameroon, and they agreed that they will be run and ruled as brotherly nations. That is the Southern Cameroons, which is the Northwest and the Southwest regions, and joining their brothers, the French Cameroon, which have been ruled under the French. The French Cameroon government gave independence to Cameroon, the Cameroon we are talking about, in 1961. While we, as the Anglophones, the Southern Cameroonians, the English-speaking, were swapped from under colonial rule with British Cameroon and forced under military dictatorship to join Cameroon, meanwhile we got our independence on the 1st of October 1960. So you discover that this complex of Cameroon did not just start before Biya, it has existed, but Biya came in after the first president, Ayujo, and promised that he's going to rule the peoples of Cameroon as one. But unfortunately in 1884, he breached that unity, and we went further in 1996, where he set up from a 5-year term as a president to a 7-year mandate. Against the constitution, he made sure that the opposition had no say. Remember, the leading opposition party in Cameroon from the 1990s is the Social Democratic Front, SDF. We said we cannot stand and watch a president change the mandates from 5 years to 7 years. As if that was not enough, in 2008, the president again abolished the 7-year term which he had put in place in 1996. So therefore, you realize that the same president opened it indefinitely. Therefore, so a 7-year term of 2 mandates, which is 7 years, and another 7 years, which gives him 14 years. He opened it up in 2008, abolished the system, and said he has to rule indefinitely. And the CPDM government, which is the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, has therefore killed the political trenches in the country, where if you are a politician, you are either paid off, you are either eliminated, or you are incarcerated.
So now let's bring it forward. 2018, Ambazonians fled Cameroon ahead of the last elections. This was in 2018. Are they expected to go back to vote now? Are they going to be taking part in this election?
Unfortunately, just to correct that, it was in 2016 when the people of the Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, sat down and said, the dictatorship has reached a climax where those of us who are from the Anglophones, that is the English-speaking colonized under the British, were asked forcibly by the French, who make up 70% of the country, to stop speaking English in our schools and in our courts, which therefore is some form of a black-on-black apartheid, to put it simply. So we were asked not to teach in English, a language of our birth, which is a colonial language inherited. We were even stopped from teaching our kids with the language of the Simi Bantu, like I'm from Bafut, from the northwest region of Southern Cameroon. And so in 2016, when lawyers and teachers went out for a peaceful march and say, you cannot take away the language. The people's culture begins from what they speak. So from there, the lawyers and the teachers were not only beaten up, they were locked up. And from 2016 to 2018, more than 2,000, including our leaders who were in Nigeria under the leadership of President Sissoco, were kidnapped from Nigeria in coalition with, or in connection with the Nigerian government. And then they were hijacked to Cameroon under a private jet in the middle of the night. So from there, we in the diaspora and others said, you are not going to be treating your citizens as slaves in their own country. So from 2016, there was a revolution which started peacefully, and when the government cracked down and killed more than 1,000 civilians, mostly women and children, that's where the people of Southern Cameroon said enough is enough, and they had to take up self-defense. So as what is happening now, as we speak, there is a lot of chaos that has happened in the northwest and in the southwest region of Cameroon. That chaos has precipitated refugee influx into all of Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa. Like in South Africa, I think there are more than 2,000 Ambazonians in this state, which is not from our choice of theirs. And we are calling on the South African government, the African Union, that has failed vehemently to look into the nitty-gritties of a 92-year-old dictator, and the UN that has given us a deaf ear. So we are I'm using this platform, thank you Channel Africa, to say the people of Southern Cameroon and Cameroon, they have a lot of talents. They are educated. They are scholars. They are agriculturists. There are a lot of things. They want to go back home. I'm addressing for those, the ambassador who is here in South Africa, and for the population that are watching or listening in one way or the other. We are not fighting the peoples of Cameroon. The Southern Cameroonians are fighting a system that has been in place for 45 years, more than 4 decades.
Now, Cletus, let's speak about the challenges that you face as individuals, as Ambazonians from South Cameroon. The challenges that you face in terms of your identity and how the conflict has impacted not only yourself, but you and your fellow Southern Cameroonians and Cameroonians in terms of your lives and having to now live and work in South Africa.
Yes, unfortunately, by the time we were born, the French system of government called us Nigerians. They labeled us as Biafrans because the colonial system that is from the Berlin West African Conference of 1884, it cut and patched up spaces in Africa and linked together. So France and Britain sat in Germany on the Berlin Conference and said, we are going to cut off part of Cameroon, which was under British rule, and give it to French Cameroon. So you had 2 people, 2 constitutions, two flags, two cultures, two of everything. So while we spoke French. And so from the time we started growing up, our fathers and forefathers were called refugees in their own country, like the apartheid days in South Africa, where people were given a dump pass. We also had some sort of a dump pass, where you were taught that you will never become the president of a country that is a seat of your bed. So we are limited to 4 ministries, no matter how hard we worked. The Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Farming and Industries, and one other ministry of maybe arts. So we never were accepted, a loss of identity, and so it spiraled the rise for immigration. And so you will have, if you go to Nigeria, you will have more than 1 million of our people who are there as refugees.
Present day today, in Cameroon, the election process has basically started in terms of, parties holding, their messages or taking their messages to the people in terms of who they should vote for. And there has been a call for opposition parties to work together for one single candidate to oppose, in opposition of President Paul Biya. Are people responding to that call? Are opposition parties responding to that call? What messages are you getting from home?
Well, the people do not have a choice. There are about 80 plus parties in Cameroon. And you realize that of those 80 parties, less than 7 are really opposition parties. Okay. The rest of the parties are corrupted parties standing in the front of the ruling CPDM. So for so long, you've had elections. In 1990, when Nijon Fundi, the late president of the Social Democratic Front, stood up and won the elections in the 90s, it was rigged. And from that process, everything became a rigging machine because the constitution have been changed again and again, which gave way for voter apathy. So as we speak now, the few parties, this is the SDF that is existing, and some other few parties, young people of 45s, 50s, and 60-something that are standing to vie in for the Cameroon's election. They have already lost before the election date because the Election Observer Committee, which is called ELECAM, Election Cameroon, is made up of members of the CPDM, which are the party of the ruling dictator Paul Biya.
Well, Cletus, we have run out of time, unfortunately, and we are going to have to leave it there. But I will ask that maybe you come back and we have another discussion, especially when it gets closer to the elections in October. Thank you for coming through and joining us.
Thank you so much. And one last message to all the Southern Cameroonians here in South Africa. We know that you are facing challenges of documentation because of this dictatorship, but rest assured we are working with the South African government, the African Union, and the UN to be able to alleviate your situations because we know they are not going to go back home because the president has already won even before the election is announced or even the practice takes place. So thank you very much and looking forward in many more discussions in the future.
That is Cletus Sufri, who is the spokesperson of Ambazonia South Cameroonians in South Africa, joining us live in studio. And that's our question for today on hashtag Africa Update. Ask Cameroon going to elections in October. 92-year-old President Paul Biya will be looking for another term in office. And we're asking, do you think African leaders overstay their welcome? And should there be a final cutoff for presidents, or should they be allowed to continue until they feel it is time to leave? Let us know your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. Our news headlines up next with Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Moves to end fighting in Eastern DRC that are essential to U.S. President Donald Trump's plans for a mining bonanza in the region are meant to get underway this weekend. However, the future of a small rebel group has emerged as one of the major obstacles. Lesotho Parliament is this week expected to discuss claims by the country's security organs that there are illegal training camps on South African farms. and Media Monitoring Africa, together with its partners, have convened African journalists, fact-checkers, digital rights specialists, and international collaborators for a conversation on combating climate change disinformation and upholding information integrity. The one-day summit is being held in Johannesburg, South Africa. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. I am Musibu Dimakura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. So the Kenya head coach Benny McCarthy has named his final 25-man squad for the upcoming Total Energies African Nations Championship Chan tournament, which kicks off in less than 2 weeks. Now, the Harambee Stars have been in camp for the past fortnight, with McCarthy trimming the squad to an initial 30 players. He also made several late-up call-ups, should I say, after the first week of training, ensuring his side will be well prepared ahead of the Continental Showpiece, which also is reserved exclusively for players active in the domestic league. Now, among the key inclusions is striker Masood Juma, who has recently returned to the local league after a spell abroad. Juma is expected to lead Kenya's front line during the tournament and also be central figure to the team's attacking efforts. Notable inclusions is 18-year-old Austin Odongo, who plays for Shabani FC in the Kenyan Premier League. He was also a late addition to the squad. He's one of the youngest member of the team and is now poised to make his senior international debut. Kenya will open their Chan 2024 campaign against the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's on the 3rd of August at the Moy Sports Centre Kasarani, with the support from the home fans expected to boost Harambe's chance ambitions as well as chances in this year's competition. Well, South Africa's women's national football team coach Dr. Desiree Ellis has vowed to deliver a medal for injured player Gabriela Salgado when they take on Ghana in the third-place playoff match of the CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco on Friday. Now, Banyana will play in the clash to fight for a bronze medal after losing to Nigeria by 2-1 in the semi-finals. Ahead of the fixture at Stade Labri Zaoule, Ellis has promised to beat Ghana and give the injured Salgado a medal from this year's tournament. The winger was stretchered off late in the second half following an accident during the defeat against the Super Falcons of Nigeria. Salgado has now went for a successful surgery, remains in hospital as she recuperates, and will only leave when the team departs for Morocco.
We want to do this for Gabby. We have another game coming up and we really want to do that for Gabby. We have a reason really now to make sure that she goes on with the medal, but we're just rooting for her and we just want to be there for her. I think it's difficult for all of us. We came here to want to defend the title. Unfortunately, that's now out of the way, and the third and fourth place is always it's a funny game, for lack of a better word, because in many eyes it's a nothing game, if you want to call it that, but there's still a medal at stake.
On to some rugby news now. So having faced the Black Ferns herself as a player at the 2010 Women's Rugby World Cup and later working as the media liaison officer during the HSBC Sevens in Cape Town, Johannes Hood has a unique insight into the mindset of New Zealanders. She says South Africa's goal now will be to take the game to the visitors from the first whistle and also apply the scoreboard pressure. This, of course, in the build-up to next month's Women's Rugby World Cup that's taking place in England, where South Africa will be participating in that global event.
We're definitely going into this game hoping to put their skill set under pressure, because in the past New Zealand's always been good at playing the ball, and that is definitely something we've highlighted in their game. They play a good brand of rugby. They play an expansive yet structured game. So we'd like to put them under good pressure.
Right, so the South African women's rugby side will face off with the Black Ferns this coming Saturday in Cape Town as part of their preparations for the upcoming tournament. The test at Athlone Stadium in the Western Cape province marks also the first of two international friendly matches against New Zealand. The visitors, and also forms a very key part of South Africa's preparations for the Rugby World Cup. Now, while the Boks will also look to make their physicality count in the scrums as well as the lineouts, Johannes Hood says they are also working on broadening their attacking game.
We're seen as a very set-piece dominant team. Yes, we are still going to be a set-piece dominant team. However, adding some more variety and more spice to it in our attacking play is really something special. And I think our head coach brings a wealth of experience in the attacking arena. So to put something extra on the table is always exciting. And to see how well our girls execute that plan is even more exciting.
And finally, in tennis news, Stefanos Tsitsipas has parted ways with his coach Goran Ivanovic after a brief but intense coaching spell. Now, Greece's Tsitsipas began working with Ivanovic in May after winning only 2 matches in his past 4 Grand Slam appearances. However, he won only 1 match during the grass court season and was 2 sets down against Valentin Roya in the Wimbledon first round before retiring injured. Now, the Croatian Ivanovic, a former Wimbledon champion who also worked with Novak Djokovic for 6 years, was also critical of Tsitsipas's fitness. Tsitsipas has been high as number 3 in the world and was also runner-up to Djokovic back at the 2021 French Open as well as the 2023 Australian Open. He is currently 29th in the world rankings and has not gone beyond the second round of a major since last year's French Open. Ivanovic also had a short spell working with former Wimbledon champion Elina Rybakina at the start of the year. It's a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invitée du jour, la belle Aïna Mwenze. Elle est là, certaines l'appellent Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Jolino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aïna. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait. Et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business. Comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me dis, bon, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon. In our top business story at this hour, China's state oil and gas major Sinopec Group says it signed a contract to explore the Gurn El Geser 2 natural gas block in Algeria that potentially holds large shale gas resources. The contract was signed earlier this week between Sinopec and state-run Algerian oil and gas company Sonatrach. This contract follows an earlier $850 million deal in February in which the two companies agreed to jointly explore and develop the Hassi-Berkane North Field. International low-cost airline FlySafair says it's committed to resolving its pilot strike. Wage talks between the airline and South Africa's trade union Solidarity, which is representing the airline's pilots, will now resume at the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration in the Gauteng province tomorrow. The two parties met at the union's offices in Johannesburg yesterday. Around 200 pilots are on strike. They are demanding a 10.5% salary increase, but the airline is offering 5.7%. The strike has led to the cancellation of several flights, leaving passengers stranded. The airline's chief marketing officer, Kirby Gordon.
The reality is that no one ever seeks to be in this situation, and it stands to reason that the company takes the demands of the union very seriously in terms of being unviable in order to arrive ourselves at this situation. If the demands had been reasonable, we obviously would have foregone it in the first place. So we need to stand firm in terms of balancing the requirements or the demands and the interests of the pilots with the long-term sustainability of the company and the jobs of the 1,700 other people that we employ. So yes, we approach the negotiation table with an open mind. Of course we do. We always negotiate in good faith. These are ultimately our team members that we look to have part of, and we do need to find middle ground. We're very open to that, but there needs to be some movement on those sorts of numbers.
Angola's oil-backed loans owed to China will drop to $7.58 billion by year-end as the government moves to reduce its exposure to resource-backed financing. Director of Debt Management Unit in the Finance Ministry says all debt collateralized by oil revenues is concentrated in agreements with China, which have been gradually reduced in recent years. According to official data, oil-backed loans to China stood at $10.146 billion at the end of last year and had already dropped to $8.94 billion at the end of last month. Ghana plans to shorten mining license durations and mandate direct revenue sharing with local communities in its most sweeping mining law reforms in nearly 2 decades. The planned overhaul reflects a broader trend across West Africa, where governments are rewriting mining codes to capture more value from rising commodity prices. Ghanaian Lands and Natural Resources Minister Emmanuel Ama Kofi-Bua says the changes, which include scrapping automatic renewal of some licenses, will apply only to future contracts. Renee Luechaka reports.
Under the proposed law changes, prospecting licenses would no longer be held indefinitely, and the maximum term for mining leases would be reduced from 30 years to a shorter period agreed by the government and firms. Companies failing to meet environmental, social, or production obligations would lose the right to automatic license renewal. The minister says the overhaul of the Minerals and Mining Act and mining policy was 85% complete following extensive stakeholder consultations. Renele Chaka for Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg.
Australia has lifted its biosecurity restrictions on beef imports from the United States. Its strict controls on beef had angered President Trump, who had threatened 200% tariffs on Australian pharmaceuticals. The BBC's Phil Mercer has more.
The ban on beef was one of the Trump administration's main grievances with Australia. The restrictions were mentioned by the White House when it imposed tariffs on Australia in April. The government in Canberra says a rigorous scientific review, not political pressure, is behind its decision to allow US beef imports to resume after more than 20 years.
And now for our first look at the indicators this afternoon, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,528 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 38 Kenya. The dollar is trading at 128 shilling 43, and in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 3. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 54. Russia, 78 rubles 44. In India, it's 86 rupees 37. China, 7 yuan 17. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 54 cents this afternoon. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,362 and platinum at $1,418 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $69.18 a barrel. And those are your business news. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Bontle Hedbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 12:47 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 4069126 hashtag Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Eswatini civic groups have expressed concern over the U.S. deportation of dangerous convicted criminals, with alleged links to terrorist groups. Now, the men are being held in solitary as a dumping ground, raising serious concerns about security in the region. We're joined live by the Swaziland Solidarity Network spokesperson Lucky Lukele to discuss the reaction in Eswatini. Lucky, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon to you and also to the listeners at home.
Now, Lucky, what specific concerns has the Swaziland Solidarity Network raised about this whole arrangement or whole agreement of the U.S. deporting convicted criminals to Eswatini, especially looking at the characterization of these individuals as having alleged links to terrorist groups?
Well, as the Solidarity Network, we were shocked, but at the same time, somehow not surprised by this arrangement. This arrangement marks of a gangster kind of a deal by two leaders that have a brain of a rat. So clearly, someone has received money from someone. In this case, King Mswati is a receiver. Now, what angers many Swazis and Africans in particular, this marks of racism from Donald Trump. Not long ago, he insulted the people of South Africa, saying there's white genocide, and then offered those people who have failed in life in South Africa some refugee status in America. These people committed crime in America, and they should be serving sentences in America, not to dump them in Swaziland. Clearly, he's saying in their own statement, the American government publicly stated that these people are so uniquely barbaric such that their own countries of origins have refused them. Yet he sees it fit to dump them in Africa and in Swaziland in particular. On the other hand, the king contradicted himself by accepting these criminals in a sense that 3 weeks ago, in his address to the nation, as he was addressing the nation on Correctional Services Day, he publicly stated that the prisons in Swaziland are so overcrowded that he's putting up a team of advisors to help him select those that can be given mercy or release on mercy by him. Now, boom, he accepts these criminals. Hence, we call it a gangster deal.
Now, what are your concerns about the capacity? Okay, you've just highlighted that the prisons are full. But now, in terms of the structural, capacity of the prisons themselves, where do you know where they are? Are they in just a normal prison population? Are they in CMAX? Are they in isolation? Do you have any details with regards to exactly how they are being housed there?
The only information that we have is that they are currently in Matsapa maximum prison, as per the information from government. But again, you will remember that, for instance, one of the criminals has been sentenced to 20 years in prison by the American justice system. Now, we don't know how long has he already served his sentence in America. As we know it, a year in jail, especially the Swaziland system together with the South African, it's 8 months. So sooner or later, these criminals will be roaming the street. If they are released, where will they go to? Even if the prison can be as strong as we may wish, if they are released, it means no one is safe. If you are in South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, or anywhere in the SADC region immediately, no one is safe. These criminals can come and cause havoc. And our biggest worry is that even those that are currently serving sentences in Swaziland, who are Swazis, may get some bad influence from these people to a point that whatever measures that are being done to correct them, they actually may come out as hardcore criminals learning from these Donald Trump friends and hyenas as criminals.
Lucky, what is Swaziland Solidarity Network? What steps have you taken in terms of demanding for accountability and just public consultation? Take us through your process now and what you're going to be doing going forward.
Well, we are calling to all those neighboring countries, mainly Mozambique and South Africa, to be the first one to show some leadership in seriously rejecting this thing and saying to Swaziland, if you do not send back these people, we are closing our borders, we are sanctioning you. Just that threat alone, King Mswati will definitely succumb to pressure, because without South Africa, for instance, Swaziland is nothing. So another thing is to mobilize the Trachea in the SADC region, also to take a strong exception in this thing, because it is an insult. Many African countries have refused to accept these people, and we applaud those leaders. However, King Mswati, by accepting these people, has really insulted the entire African population as a whole. So he needs to be called into order, as he is out of order.
And say South Africa and Mozambique just are not interested to engage on this particular issue, what then?
Well, the citizens coming from Swaziland up to the last border in the continent, they must stand up and reject these people. In actual fact, what the people of Swaziland are saying to Donald Trump, they are offering King Mswati, in addition of these criminals, to say he can accommodate him and take him with these people if he's so much in love with him, and offer him a bedroom in one of his many properties. And as a seasoned golfer, the king himself, they can enjoy each other's company in America, not in Africa. This is a worst insult, in actual fact, to the people of Swaziland.
Lucky, Eswatini is known to have prisons that are quite extreme in terms of taking care of prisoners, as it is alleged in media. But how does your organization view the potential risks to the deportees themselves, particularly, with reports about how harsh prison conditions are in Eswatini and just the lack of due process?
Well, the painful part of it, there are many prisoners in Swaziland, and some of them are innocent political prisoners that are being held without a trial in Swaziland, including former MPs, which are still languishing in prison without food. Sometimes a day goes by with just one meal a day. We don't know what will happen. But to be honest, these 5 criminals, we care less about them. All what we are worried about are the welfare of those people that are currently in prison, innocent, and those that are serving sentences. Some of them, for instance, are serving longer sentences just for merely hunting a springbok or a small animal within the game parks for food. Now, you can't then keep such people in prison, because the very same conditions that are in prison for are self-made by the king. And this money that Donald Trump will give the king definitely will not even go to the prison. It means that the king will then cut budget from the health system, which has already collapsed due to neglect by the very same government. So therefore, many problems. You remember that one longer-serving prisoner who was released on his deathbed, Amos Mbenze, a South African. He had to die just after a few months after his release in prison, because the Swaziland government couldn't even send him to hospital or get him medication. So you can imagine, of those thousands that are in Swaziland as we speak, the crisis is huge.
Yeah, well, Lucky, we have run out of time and are going to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update. That's Swaziland Solidarity Network spokesperson Lucky Lukele joining us on the line. And we say happy Thursday and hello to Dabukhule Kuleni of The Upside. How are you today?
Happy Thursday to you, Lulu. I'm good. that conversation about the prisoners.
Yeah, the US, the deported prisoners in Eswatini now.
I know when it happened initially, social media went crazy. Like, what's going to happen to the prisoners? And a lot of South Africans are like, they're going to end up in South Africa.
This is what he's saying. This is what he's saying, and he's calling on South Africa and Mozambique, to say something, do something. With regards to these people, because as he put it, a year in prison in Eswatini equals to 8 months. So they could end up being released and either in Eswatini or either in Mozambique or South Africa, because these are the nearest borders. So it's something that hopefully we'll be able to continue and just get updates from South African government and how they feel, and Mozambique as well. It will be interesting to find out.
We continue that conversation because on the upside this afternoon we talk about the psychology behind behind bars. We talk about the psychology of prisoners and what they go through on a typical day, their mental state, and then rehabilitation, getting back into society when they do get released, what challenges that they may experience. And then we get into conversation with someone who was in prison and is now back into society, the challenges that they went through, trying to find a job, trying to just readjust and live a normal life. And then later on, we talk about the 100% Design Africa, which will be taking place at the Decorex this weekend at the Sandton Convention Center. Don't miss the Hub and Speed Arts Trust stand, where there will be ceramic art displayed by over 18 South African artists. And in our final conversation, we find out how can you tell the difference between a real and a fake product when it comes to luxury items.
Ooh, something to look forward to coming up at the top of the hour on the upside with Matsiko Musito and Teboho Likuleni. And from the Africa Update team, it's been a good one. Let's do this again tomorrow. Continue with us on our social media platforms. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Latest news, the SAWA moves to end fighting in Eastern DRC that are essential to U.S. President Donald Trump's plans for a mining bonanza in the region are meant to get underway this weekend. However, the future of a small rebel group has emerged as one of the major obstacles, Tabiso Lehoko reports.
A U.S. brokered peace agreement signed last month by the Congolese and Rwandan foreign ministers was designed to halt violence that escalated this year with a lightning advance in the Democratic Republic of Congo by M23 rebels. Rwanda denies allegations from the UN and Western governments that it is fighting alongside the M23 rebels to gain access to Congo's minerals. Rwanda says its